Welcome to the February 20th Select Board meeting. Before we start, I just want to thank Ethan, Russ Standler, Nate Beisheim, Nathan Kent, and Emilio Rodriguez for bringing us this live production tonight. They always do a great job. So thank you very much, and if you could join me. We are being recorded. If you could join me in, for the pledge. Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so for those of you joining us tonight, we have a very long agenda. We will be starting with resident comment. You don't have to be a resident of Swampscott to make a comment. It's just if you want to make a comment, please come up to the microphone. You have a total of 3 minutes. Katie Phelan is going to give you the heads up at about 20 seconds to go. And if you could just give your name and your address, and we can move on. So is there anyone here for resident comment? Mr. Spritz.
Good to go?
Is that on?
I don't know. I have no idea if it's on.
Emilio, is that good?
Yeah.
You're good.
Wayne Spritz, 91 Farragut Road, Precinct 3. I just wanted to make a brief public comment about the UV disinfection project. As a career engineer myself, you know, I kind of look at this as a prototype, which is the town ready to pay for whatever the long-term solution is, right? And it comes down to it's not an inexpensive notion. It could be between $25 and $30 million. The useful life is up to 20 years. But the question then becomes really, I'd like to see the conversation about if it's going to take us X years, let's say that's 10 years, right, to fix the pipes. It's really a $25 million. That's the conversation, right? If we're willing to do that, and there's a myriad of reasons why we would and why we wouldn't, it's a choice we have to make, and it's going to be a burden on the taxpayers. And I would support either way, but as long as we're having that conversation, I think that's the smart way to realize it. Because if we are, then I'm totally behind this. Let's go ahead, let's do the prototype, prove it out, and go. But if we're never, maybe we were willing, but if we're willing to spend that money already, then also consider what does it take to accelerate fixing the pipes, right? This solution is specifically for a part of town that will only feed to Stacy's Brook. It doesn't fix the other areas at Fisherman's and so on. So the last part I want to just give my feedback to is I really, if we're going to do this prototype, right, I really want to see it with electric power. Using, let's see, 23,000 gallons of diesel, or 9 gallons an hour, is not really fair to the residents. I did a quick back of the napkin scratch calculation. Besides it being $864 a day of diesel, if you were to have a semi truck sitting in that location, spinning its wheels, going 1,500 miles a day, that's the amount of diesel that you're burning. It may not be an inch where people walk, where residents are going to be. Even if it costs $100,000, you're going to spend at least that amount on fuel.
20 seconds, Wayne.
I'd like to see that as a consideration, even if it delays the project.
Peterson. I live on Lynn Shore Drive in Lynn. I also am an engineer, and I do a lot of work with biotech and pharmaceutical companies. And when they make high purity water, UV is one of the treatments that they utilize to maintain the quality of high purity water. If you don't maintain it, it's like filling a swimming pool and you watch the sun turn it green. So you're fighting the growth, so forth. Anyway, as he mentioned, this is going to be a financial commitment if that's the way you go with it. I have mentioned or written letters to the editor regarding some other technologies that could complement this. You know, it will take time to do it. You might not get 100% effectiveness. If you get the big storm or you get the big spill, once it's down the beach, it's gone. What I have kind of warmed up to for an idea are oyster reefs. New York City has the Billion Oyster Project, and there some government grants, some private grants, and it's been going on for a decade. You can go on YouTube and you can see that and other examples of people doing this, and it's being effective. And so you grow the little seedlings, they get to a certain size, you let them form clusters, and you put them in place, and they survive, and they flourish. There are certain places that are better than others. There are people there that know all this stuff, they've made the mistakes, they've learned the lessons. Call them up, connect with them, go start the effort as like the Billion Oyster Project is not for consumption in our lifetime. That's their policy. This is not meant for that. An oyster will filter
20 seconds.
50 gallons a day, 55-gallon drum a day each. And, you know, they turn over the contents of the harbor every couple of days with just what they've created. So you don't have to go all in. You could spend thousands of dollars rather than hundreds or millions of dollars and see how it might work. So time's up. Thank you for...
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Dr. Friedman? No, we will be doing resident comment now. Now.
Arthur Friedman, Precinct 4. There was a memo or email sent around about what Kleinfeld addressed some of our questions. I don't know if the Select Board has received it. I have some questions about it. I think it's great they did answer some questions about what we had discussed. But with all the discussion covering the pilot and this proposed possible permanent UV treatment installation, how does the permanent installation of this UV treatment really coincide with the repair of the sewage lines? And I think it was addressed, if the sewage repair takes 10 years, we're proposing a 20-year life on the UV. You know, the question is, are we going to want to spend so much to get it up and running, the permanent one, or Plan Part B? So is that going to be financially feasible? And I guess it goes back to asking our Gino, our town administrator, what the anticipated timeline might be. I know but I do know every time you go look, there's another pipe problem. Do you have any idea, talking about, let's say Station Brook, then you have the Fisherman's Beach.
Then we have Preston Beach, we have Eisman's Beach.
The whole
We'll
area.
stick with Kings, will probably be 10 to 15 more years, if we get the funding.
Yeah, and I think there was maybe some, I thought misconception initially last summer when we discussed the phases, and they were talking, well, we're gonna spend this much year 1, this much year 2, this year 3. It wasn't mentioned, well, what about year 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? So maybe it was my not understanding that, but I thought it would take maybe 5 years, maybe not 10 or 15, which is probably more realistic. Okay, that was one idea. And the thing about the UV program on Stacy Brook, it doesn't really address Fisherman's Beach, which has to be remedified by the pipe fixing, correct? So, all right. And then we talked about anticipated repair time. So I guess we have a lot of still unanswered questions here, a lot of variables as far as the cost factor. And with our present administration cutting down funds, it's going to be harder, and everything's going to be coming out of our pocket. I think we have to consider what is going to be the best bang for our buck in trying to remedify this problem. I'm not saying UV function is wrong, it does work, but is that the way we want to go? And maybe if not the pilot, but to spend all that money in the future. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Friedman. Mayor?
You say you don't have to be a resident?
You do not? but you do get 3 minutes. Your name and address.
Land, and then Swampscott owns the pipes and the beach, and the city of Lynn really has no formal land, and then Swampscott owns the pipes and the beach, and the city of Lynn really has no formal role, but we felt like there was a role for us to try to bring everybody together. And that's what we did when we started in 2022, and Kleinfelder evaluated a bunch of different alternatives, strongly recommending aggressive pursuit of source elimination, but also putting out UV as the leading complementary alternative. And I think that's a really important point here, is that we are all laser focused on the source elimination, and everyone we've talked to, including the regulators, DEP, thinks that an alternate solution to complement the source elimination is going to be necessary for the beach to be open an acceptable amount of time, because when the pipes are fixed. The UV was the most attractive from a cost and time perspective. That was in end of 22, beginning of 23, they made that recommendation. There was a change in the state administration. We had a pretty lengthy back and forth with different state agencies about the UV as a concept, written answers and responses that we shared back and forth. That took almost a year. And we settled on this sampling plan to go out and get data by pulling water out of Stacy's Brook and Kings Beach and sending it to the lab at Trojan, which is the UV vendor, and seeing if the technology worked on water actually from the ground. And it did. And that was in the fall, and now we've been pursuing this pilot. We have a lot of questions about what a permanent solution would look like in terms of location and funding. When we recognize that, but for us to get to those questions, I think we need to prove out the concept in the pilot. That's what we've been working towards. We've been really approaching this collaboratively. It's funded for on our side from the $5 million earmark that the delegation obtained, that was split 50-50 between Lynn and Swampscott. We thought we had an opportunity to get a $20 million grant last year. We thought we had a real chance. We put in for $12.5 million for source elimination, because that's the priority, and we proposed to split it $8 million for Swampscott.
Hold on. So your name and your address and your Girl Scout rank?
My name is May Mancini, and I live on 68 Walker Road. I am a cadet in Girl Scouts, and last year my troop did a Bronze Award project to help the Kings Beach. We did a bag for the library, and I'm not sure if it's there yet, to teach people about how Kings Beach is dirty. I think we should put the UV in so kids can swim in the summer, because when they don't have the chance to swim like at the other beaches in Swampscott. And that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Mancini. Or I should say Cadet Mancini. Is there anyone, sir?
Thank you. Thanks. My name is Mike Salona, 139 Woodlawn Street in Lynn, Vice President of Friends of Lynn and Nahant Beach, as well as Chair of the Lynn and Water Sewer Commission Executive Board. I'm also joined here by the other members of the board, so all 5 of us are here tonight to show our support for this effort to finally get somewhere. What often that we hear is, not enough is being done. Why is this taking so long? It's a complicated effort. Lynn Water and Sewer has been working at it for decades. We have the hundreds of millions of dollars of debt to show for the work that's been done. But the concerted effort that the mayor and the individuals in Lynn Water and Sewer and in Swampscott have put together.
Is there anyone else for a public comment? Another Mancini?
Hi, I'm Chris Mancini. I also live at 68 Walker Road. And just full disclosure, I presented both sides of the situation. I said, you say whatever you want.
Sure.
But yeah, I think most people know where I stand. Boston to be the cleanest urban beaches in the country. And I moved to Swampscott specifically to try to finish the job, because Kings Beach is the dirtiest in the Commonwealth. And I just I just want to, again, throw my support. I really appreciate how the two municipalities have been working together so well over the last couple of years. It's a complicated issue. There's so much nitty gritty, but it comes down to what the discussion is today. Should we do a pilot of this UV this summer? And anyone who's spent more than 5 minutes talking to me knows I'm obsessed with this other emerging technology about ozone nanobubbles. It's really interesting, but the fact that I'm standing here saying we should do the UV pilot, I don't take that lightly. So I think it's a question. I'm not taking the price lightly either. I think we have to look and evaluate. This is going to be a cost, but what we're going to have in 2025, if we get this done in time, is an open Kings Beach for the first time in however long, 100 years, let's say. And I do think that's worth it. So you all are the ones that have to vote, and you're the ones taking care of a multi-million-dollar town budget. I understand there's so many complicated points there, but just hope you will seriously consider this and take this next step forward for Kings Beach. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini.
Controls so you could see who's raised online.
Do we have any hands up online?
Okay,
We need to-
Andrea Moore.
Time to go home. Yeah. Mr. Maitland.
Okay, so I don't see any more hands raised in the audience. We're going to go.
Hello? Oh, I can't hear you anymore. Can you hear me? You can't hear me. Okay. For some reason, I can't hear you. So there might be an issue with the sound for the folks who are online now. But I'm going to barrel ahead anyways. Katie, can you just give me a thumbs up to make sure you can still hear me? Thank you. Okay. So Andrea Moore, Precinct 3, town meeting member and founder of Save Kings Beach. I wanted to start by saying I'm really speech. And I want to have everybody look around the room and see how many smart, passionate people who deeply care about this issue are around you. This is a really good thing, and we should all be proud of the positive progress that we are making. So as you begin debating this issue, I want each of you to know how appreciative I am that we are all having the good fortune to be at the table together discussing, hopefully civilly, the path forward for this project. That being said, there are, thank you to you five and the dozens of others who have taken up this extremely difficult task, and truly let us all continue to work together. That being said, there is a lot of source elimination work that has still not been addressed by either Lynn or Swampscott. Sewer lateral ordinances, ponds that flow into Stacy's Brook with unknown bacteria levels, inconsistent testing regimens in both Lynn and Swampscott, CCTV work that has unfortunately stalled in the city of Lynn. So as part of this conversation, as we consider UV, I urge the select board and the city of Lynn to zoom out and look at the whole ecosystem affecting Stacy's Brook. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea Moore. That's fine. Nope, there's the other one. Okay. So we are going to move forward now, under new and old business, and we'll begin with our town clerk.
Mary Ellen, is there a reason we don't just take up this topic since all these people are here waiting for it?
Well, because we also have staff here, Doug, and we're just gonna, I'm
More than happy to wait if you guys want to do it.
I prefer that we go over, I want to go over the finances first, and then we can, go ahead, Jared.
Jared Liberty, Town Clerk, thank you for having me. I was asked to come down today just to give a brief update on the Town Clerk's office along with the Public Records section of my office. Town Clerk's office is in the middle of one of our busy seasons. We just had census go out in January, which we're finishing up, along with dog licensing and the start of our local election season. So far, we've had a very good showing of town meeting members who are currently active, who have put papers to run again, as well as a number of new people who are excited to run for the first time. Our deadline to pull papers is March 7th, and then March 11th to get them back, and at which point we'll be finalizing the ballot for our April 29th local town election. There were a number of positions up state townwide, and all that information is on the front page of the Swampscott website, along with at the town clerk's section of it, if anyone is interested in that. Next is just I wanted to give, I was asked a brief overview of public records for my office. I have supplied this report with a full breakdown of the law itself. We can forward them to the custodian. The town clerk's office doesn't hold the records themselves. That is by each individual department as who holds the records, which is governed by the retention schedule in the state of Massachusetts. We then work with the various departments to collect the record, do a lot of the administrative work in compliance with state law. The only thing I wanted to highlight is for the select board on the back page of your handout is the town of Swampscott last year got about a little north of 1,400 public records requests. That's for all departments. It's not an exact science. Some of them are simple, quick, that we can get done without much effort, and I try to just get those out as quickly as possible. So that's not accounting every single one that's come in, but that is the vast majority of them that have come in. The biggest department by far is the police department, given the nature of their work, incident reports for all sorts of different incidents, accidents, etc., followed by the fire department, and then the town office building as a whole. This year, so far, we have had 257 requests to date, which is an uptick. We've seen an uptick over the past years, just steadily over the past few years in public records requests. And in addition, the 10-year census, we are allowed to charge. We are roughly at 15,000 right now, 15,500 by the last census. So the town, in consultation with the town clerk's office, in consultation with the previous town administrator and the current town administrator, has made the determination that anything over half an hour we charge in order so that the burden is not put on the taxpayers to fund public records requests. So far this year, in this fiscal year, talking to the director, we have collected. What over the year, talking to the record, we have collected what over $1,100 worth of fees. You know, in line with state law, several petitions have gone in. Recently, we have seen an uptake in request for privileged information, which requires legal counsel to look at it, which is each time that happens, we do go to, and while not charging the full amount that legal counsel costs the town, it does somewhat offset the cost to the town itself. In that vein, talking to the finance director, because of some of the public records requests, the town clerk's legal, what town clerk has spent on legal has gone up. But we are actively trying to make sure that we spend the town's money wisely as every employee's job. So happy to answer any questions that the board has, comments, concerns.
Does anybody have a question?
Why are we talking about this?
I'm going to have a question. Do you have a question?
For you, yeah. Why are we talking about this? I have no idea. Really.
It's been brought up, if you've been listening to the public comments, it's been brought up over and over and over, and that's why the clerk is here giving an update on what FOIA is and what the election is like.
I remember one person that was interested in why they weren't responded to timely and why they were charged so much. Is that?
Okay, well, I remember.
Amount of the lowest paid employee who can do the work, or 20 people can't go above $25 without petitioning. Most of the people who can do the work get paid by the town above a $25 wage, so we cap it at $25 per hour, except for legal counsel.
Have we asked people to pay more than $25 an hour?
Yes, for legal counsel.
Why would we need legal counsel involved?
They're going to request for privileged information, which we still have to inform the person that we have records, which are, and the legal counsel needs to go through. They're the lowest paid employee who can do that. I am not a lawyer. I do not pretend to be one, and so the legal counsel is required on those sorts of public records requests.
Doug, it's mostly to redact information that needs to remain privileged.
Correct, yeah.
Doesn't that happen a lot?
Not like there's been an uptick lately. Previous to this fiscal year, there was maybe a handful that were, but it's been an uptick recently. It hasn't been over my time. No, it's not. Before this year, there was actually when I started going to legal counsel, and it became. I was brought to my attention about the amount that was being spent, and talking to our legal counsel. About what we could charge that we can't charge a full amount. So it's been, I want to say it was October, November actually was the first time we requested it.
So how many times have we done that?
I'd have to get you, I want to say about 10, maybe a little bit less.
10 times we've charged people more than $25 an hour?
We have requested from the supervisor.
Board for releasing his FOIA, and I just want to make it really clear, and you can clear us up, the board has nothing to do with FOIA requests, with releasing FOIA requests, holding up a FOIA request, or anything like that.
No, it's my office. The only way the board is involved is if I need to go to the board for records of their own, which has happened on occasion, but the board has never directed me to release one, to direct my office to do any of that. My office to do any of that. I've only gone to the board when necessary to get documents that are public records.
So his gratitude for the release is really for you, not for us. Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So Jared, in late January, a resident was told there was a new policy. It was told there was a new policy to charge for the time, with the review of the records requests to determine if there was privileged items included. Who created the new policy?
So that was in consultation with the previous town administrator, Sean Fitzgerald, reiterated with current interim town administrator, Gino Custer.
So do we have a copy of, is it a written policy or is it a verbal policy? Okay, and we provided that information to that specific resident. Is that provided that information to that specific resident? Is that correct?
No, he didn't.
I would have to check. I can.
Was that resident charged for that request?
I do not believe so. But again, I have to go look at my spreadsheet. I get several hundred a year. I'd have to go double check.
Okay. Are you aware that previously town council had advised that such individual evaluations may be privileged as non-public personnel?
I remember talking to them about it. I don't remember what the discussion was in particular.
Okay, so you did. So did you or did you not seek a town council opinion prior to releasing? You did.
That was prior to the new policy going into effect. Yes.
Okay, and they said that was okay.
I would have to check my emails.
So are you saying we did release?
Yeah, I am. So we don't know if we charged that individual. And then did you know that there is a legal privilege that may be applied to a document? It's a vote and only a vote of this board that can decide whether to apply that privilege or not?
You talk about personnel privilege?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did this board take a vote or a previous iteration?
I do not know whether we released it. I don't know. So I couldn't speak to that. I'd have to go check.
Okay. But I'm pretty sure that information was released because I was on this board.
I would, again,
I just got to say, I mean, I'm looking at these quick facts and everything else that got dropped on us at 3 o'clock. We're talking about in 2024, we had, almost 1,400 public records requests. We're talking about police have the largest amount of public records requests. Does that go through your office, Mr. Town Clerk?
The police do it in consultation with my office, yes.
Got it. Okay. So, and there's just also numbers from 2025, 257 public records requests, but down below, we talk about 55 requests from your office. So it just seems that the numbers and the information, it just doesn't jive. Just with what I'm seeing on this under quick facts on page 3.
So I break out the ones that the police specifically deal with, because a lot of them are shorter and easier to handle than the ones my office gets. Break out the ones that my office, like, is completely, like, the police department does them in consultation with me, but I broke out the ones that my office all specifically, just separate from that, just to kind of highlight some facts.
Got it. Okay. Because, I mean, you're showing 1369, and there was a spreadsheet that was provided, I believe, to Miss Arrington that showed 157 on the spreadsheet. That's just a big discrepancy and a
Yes,
big difference.
she asked for the ones that I had from my office, so I provided her with those.
Okay. All right.
Can I just make sure I'm following what you're asking, David? So is the point kind of like, in some ways, the subtext on all of this feels like there's so much work that has to be done that we need to charge people for the work, but it actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Jared, like, it feels like the vast majority, let me just finish. The vast majority of the records requests actually are processed by the police department. So like out of 257 this year, 55 actually were done by your office?
Yes, so basically, but that is not how I view public records requests. It's the amount of time to take to do each one. A lot of the police department ones are, hi, I got into an accident, can I get my incident report? Very easy for Lieutenant Freyler to handle those, get those out quickly. A lot of mine are hours worth of work in order to get all the information that is required for them. So
No, again, I just got to say, I mean, this seems eerily familiar and similar to our last meeting where we had a presentation about executive sessions. We had no advance notice. We had no chance to prepare for the conversation. We were shown very fuzzy statistics. No one on the board except the chair knew what was going to be shared. It just felt, the executive session presentation felt like propaganda. We received a note from a resident who said, and I quote, "After our last meeting, regarding the statistics you showed, the 2025 Fletcher figures are misleading because the number of months in the period is fewer than the previous. This makes the select board appear either manipulative or incompetent." And just tonight's presentation just feels extremely similar to me. So, I mean, some of the things that I learned since our agenda was posted, it seems the number of public records requests from June 24 to mid-January 25 was 98. 28 were filed by Swampscott residents, and 3 times of the 28, the clerk charged a fee. And in each of those 3 times, he sought permission from the Secretary of State to charge the highest hourly fee allowed by law. If you want information about the select board, you have to pay for it, residents. But if you want any information about anything else, including potentially privileged and private information about town employees, no problem, just ask for it. But you'll look into that and check into that for us. So, before my colleagues accuse me of grandstanding and politicizing this, I didn't put this topic on the agenda. The chair did. I just think I think the public records behavior and the new policy is scary. I think it's heads on backwards. I think it's way too similar to the autocratic policies that we're seeing nationally. And no disrespect to you, Mr. Clerk, I don't think you're making these decisions yourself. I think you're acting with direction from someone. And either way, we should be concerned. And this is the reason I strongly support the citizens petition that was filed the other week seeking to change the town of Swampscott bylaws to ensure that residents are not charged for public records. This petition was filed by 9 former select board members and 2 former finance committee members. We shouldn't need former elected and prominent leaders and appointed and elected to show this current board how to lead. So
When would we find out about that?
And who would tell us?
When it comes for the warrant, it goes on to the warrant. So when we start discussing the warrant, it just automatically goes in. Anybody
it
can
was a
file.
10-person petition, which is not enough to clear it into town administrator when I certified it in my office, which is how it's worked since I've been here.
It just automatically goes on to the warrant.
Sure.
Understood, but it would be nice if you guys know about it to let us know that there's a citizens petition.
I was just standing there when the individual walked by, so that's the only reason. And I didn't know if it was certified. I just heard that. I heard about it. I don't know where we're at.
I'm forwarding to the board right now.
So I just want to be really clear. No one on this board is telling you to charge people X amount of dollars, and any of these policies were already voted on. I think that the policy for charging people was voted on 2 years ago by this board, and it was a request by Mr. Fitzgerald. So you can go back and look at the minutes, because I actually had a concern at the time was, would we be charging residents? How does this affect residents? And the number one concern was how many people were sending in requests that were not residents. I guess individuals just looking for more information. That was the explanation at the time.
If I might just say one thing.
You go right ahead.
Thank you. We do not charge the limit of what we can charge for the legal, as you intimated. We only charged of what she wanted. We were going to charge her because it was going to be a voluminous request. She explained what she wanted. Ms. Salo and I were able to work with her, get her the information for free for what she wanted. We do try to work with the citizens of Swampscott. I do very much believe in open government, in that the citizens have a right to get this information. I try my best.
Incredibly, ridiculously tight budget, but I don't think the place to solve this is a couple $100 putting an impediment in terms of people getting access to information, even if it's privileged and needs to be redacted. So if we need to revisit that policy, let's do it. I think that's just absurd.
Jared, could you tell me, I'm not sure if this is on, but are there other towns, comparable towns that have a similar price structure or policy regarding what they do and do not charge for? Have you done that research? Or?
I have anecdotally talked to a few other towns. I could do the market research if you wish me to, or the research from other towns, but on large requests, that is standard practice. It was standard practice in the last town I worked in. On really big requests, it's to do that. I will just mention that towns that are too much bigger than us can't charge for the first 2 hours under statute, so we're kind of the higher end of.
It certainly should not be and is not appropriate in my view, but I do appreciate your answers and your response, and I trust your level of professionalism when you are enacting these policies or working with the TA or interim TA to go over these policies. I do also think that with our legal bills, and we're going to see in a couple minutes just exactly where they are, and how much over they are, it makes sense that when legal is involved or has to be involved because of redaction and whatever, that we do pass on a fee for that. We are asking for a lot to be done in certain cases and certain requests. From what you're saying, that I think it is fair that if people really want, lots and lots of information that require a lot of your time, a lot of lawyers' time to go through that stuff, we can't just inherently eat that charge, right, or eat that fee. I mean, I think that, and I do appreciate that you work with people and you do try to do as much as you can so it doesn't cost them as much as necessary. But again, that is something that you're allowed to do per MGL, and many other towns do the same. So I don't see that it's outside of our bounds, and and love your information. I appreciate it.
Might I?
Please.
I think echoing some of the things that Danielle has that Danielle has said, but also understanding that if there is a policy in place, just making sure that it's being followed uniformly, right? And I'm not claiming it is or isn't, I'm just stating that because master than what we do, right? So we've set an internal policy which is less than the law allows. So now, instead of saying the law, worse, right? We could be more onerous to citizens. We chose not to be, but then making sure that in choosing not to be, that we are doing so across the board.
Yes, we take that very seriously. We apply it equally across the board to everyone since this has gone in. We do try to make sure citizens get the information they need. I am more than willing to either take direction from the board if this is something you wish to change, or work with the TA to get a formal written policy down so that it is stated on our website, wherever, so that citizens know when they're doing it. Whatever would be best. am happy to do that. I'm happy to make sure that that is the case, so.
Yeah, I think that might be helpful if we are choosing as a board or not, if we're going to discuss this policy going forward, and then whatever policy decision is made, making sure that it's available to the public so that they know in advance, so that they don't show up and then feel like, oh, this is happening just against me, but that it's actually a policy that we've
Of course.
given them notice to.
Very good point. Very good point. Thank you very much. I will work with the TA and make sure that everyone knows and that no one feels as though they're being targeted unfairly by this. I would never want that to be the case.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have the discussion on appointing a poet laureate.
Madam Chair, can once again, I would like to request that we take the UV pilot discussion and possible vote out of order.
Mr. Grishman, we have Swampscott residents that have been sitting here to discuss this poet laureate, and then we have our financial, so I can appreciate the people that are here.
I would like to make a motion that we take this out of order, and we immediately discuss Water Sewer Advisory Committee's UV pilot program.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against?
I
No.
would rather discuss the budget before we discuss the UV, because I think there's implications there.
I just need 5 minutes for the poet, promise. So, the poet laureate,
Thank you, Mary Ellen Fletcher, Chair, and other members of the Select Board, for the invitation to address you on the position of Poet Laureate of Swampscott. My name is Stephen Inacone, 26 Rock Ave, and with me are two of the other past Poets Laureate of Swampscott, Lee Eric Friedman and Nancy Hewitt. Unfortunately, the fourth was unable to be here today. Her name is Shelley Jonkowski Smith. We'd like to start with a brief presentation of poems by Shelley. They are in the form of a Japanese poetry style known as haiku. The photographs are her originals, and could we have the first one?
First haiku, I love our town pier, the way it stands there shaking its fists to the sea. Next.
Nancy Hewitt, 55 Thomas Road.
Jarrett, why don't we just skip the next one, because time's going. What is a poet laureate? Great question. To be honest, there's not a definitive answer looking through the history of the title. A poet laureate elevates the pursuit of artistic communication. By including this as an element of the town community expression, it encourages modes of art. The poet laureate is a writer who, among other poets, has attained some achievement in their work. The role focuses on encouraging the writing, study, and reading of poetry in its wide range of styles and types.
So Swampscott has a history of appointing poet laureates from 2014 to 2020. The program was founded by Sammy Lawler. She's a retired elementary school teacher from Stanley School, and she was the creator, and she served as the first administrator to the program. She realized that the town of Swampscott possesses many fine writers and sought to honor some of those, as well as writing poetry as part of the person's lifelong work, such as workshops and things like that.
It should be noted that other communities are taking this opportunity to begin or resurrect Poets Laureate, including Lynn and Salem. A process to select a Massachusetts State Poet Laureate has just recently been announced by our governor. In your written statement, you will find a more comprehensive list of communities in Massachusetts and other states honoring their poets. In your written packet, there is also an outline of the process by which the past as well as future poets laureate were or would be chosen. As past receivers of this honor, we are committed to assisting whomever the select board
Come on.
whomever the select board determines will administer the program. Thank you for this time to allow us to make this presentation. We are here also to answer any questions you might have.
Does anybody have any questions on the process for, excuse me? Does anybody have any questions for the, I do have one question. Is this something that the Library Board of Trustees could work with and then make a recommendation, or is this something that has to?
I think so. The library's worked, I'm the president of the Tin Box Poets, which some of
Okay.
you probably know, and our group has worked with the library in the past for contests, as well as open mic nights and things like that.
Okay, so are you the liaison?
I am.
So is that something that you can?
Glad to take that
Okay,
back to them.
so Katie Phelan is going to take up that charge, so you'll be hearing from Katie, okay? And then we'll find out if there's anything we have to do. You know, I think if the trustees give us a recommendation on who you want, then we could vote for it and make it official. How does that sound? Okay? Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Patrick, you want to do the bond? Okay. So we have a presentation of, we're just going to do our bond real quick, and then we're going into our financial presentation.
Okay, thank you for having me. Patrick Luddy, Town Treasurer, of a bond anticipation note and a series of bonds. We conducted a sale yesterday. A little bit of background. I was before you about a year ago today to conduct a note sale for a $12 million note, and that's coming due March 6th. So in anticipation of that, I've met with the Director of Finance and Administration, and we structured out a, thank you. Thank you. We structured out what a new debt issue would be. And this debt issue addresses refinancing the amounts that are coming due, as well as financing continued spending on capital projects that have been since we last issued debt. And as part of this process, we met with 2 analysts from Standard & Poor's. I met with them jointly with the Director of Finance and Administration and the Town Administrator. Our credit rating was reaffirmed, our triple rating, which is the highest tier of credit that a municipality can have. So we continue to hold that in our hat. And yesterday we conducted the sale. We received competitive bids on both the bonds and the notes. And the note is almost $11 million, and we received 7 bids, which is more than we received last time we sold notes last year. We received 5. So there's more competition. The net interest cost for the winning bid was 2.835% on the note, and that's going to be awarded to Fidelity Capital Markets. And on the bond, we received 10 bids. Last time we sold bonds, we received 8, so again, more competition. Total interest cost of 3.03%, and that's about $3.1 million in bonds. And attached to your memo that I sent you on the 13th, I gave you the uses of the proceeds from the sale, which are all town meeting approved projects that are ongoing or completed. And I'll entertain any questions, and then I have a consolidated motion that I'd ask you to consider.
Can you just repeat, what's the interest on the band, and is that Fidelity?
Yep, it's 2.835% net interest cost, and it's Fidelity Capital Markets is the winning bidder.
Does anybody have? So is this the motion that I have in front of me?
Should be, I hope so.
So can I have a motion that the written votes presented in this meeting in connection with the town's sale of its notes and bonds be adopted as written and incorporated into the minutes of this meeting in full?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Luddy. Now, Ms. Sorrow, for town finances.
Gina and I are going to share this mic. When the town administrator and I were before the board at the last meeting, we were discussing the town administrator's preliminary budget and discussing some of the concerns that we were having and issues we were running into with regards to the reduction in local receipts, as well as the increases in health insurance and some other costs. So the board had asked that we put together a couple different budget scenarios to see how we move forward for the next meeting where the town administrator's budget will be recommended. So with that, this is just an overview of the revenue estimates that are static in each of these scenarios. The state aid is at the governor's current proposal. Estimated local receipts are at just under 5.1 million, and the indirect costs from our enterprise funds are just over $1 million. That's static in every one of these scenarios. The town administrator and I came up with 5 different budget scenarios that we ran through in trying to make sure that we were balancing the tax burden on our residents as well as providing the needed services as well as the level of service that this town has come to expect. So this is a breakdown of those 5 just as an overview of either stabilization and or excess levy capacity. For obvious reasons, we put this at a very high level. So scenario 1 would be that 2% plus 425. That results in only $945,000 of additional revenues, net of all the revenue sources. With this, we would need to do a reduction of 25 positions, equivalent to 16.21 FTE, including the closure of one of the town departments. We would reduce non-mandatory expenses. We would institute a hiring freeze with the exception of the town administrator and building commissioner vacancies. And we would do a wage freeze for any non-contracted staff. Scenario 2 is utilizing 2.5 instead of the 2%, which gives us 1.2 million of estimated revenue. And we are pretty much in the same scenario. To give a very high level look at this, the top 7 lines are kind of shared expenses that are on the town side of the ledger. So property, casualty, workers' comp, end of employment, debt, payroll, health insurance, pension, and the state assessments. I have the other town departments rolled up there, and then the direct allocation to the Swampscott Public Schools. These percentages are reflective of the percent of the overall general fund budget.
Just so I'm following, Amy, just clarification.
Yeah.
You have this page in here after scenario 2 as
Scenario 4 uses 1.5 million, bringing our revenue estimate to 2.74 over the current year, as well as the breakdown. And then scenario 5 would be using 2 million of our excess or stabilization for 3.2 million additional, would still include a reduction, 3.2 million additional, would still include a reduction of 4 or 3.47 FTE on the town side. And here's the breakdown. So in pretty much all scenarios, it's a comparison of approximately 34% of those shared expenses, 21% roughly of the rest of the town departments, and 44% for the school. This is in line with where we've been trending with how that's allocated. There was obviously a shift in here in FY23 because of the debt for the new school. This is just a reflection of our current reserve positions. So 2.5 in available free cash and 7.7 in our excess levy capacity according to the Department of Revenue.
Amy, going back to that slide for the general stabilization, can you tell us, remind us again what the
Our
recommended?
financial policy recommended guideline is 9 to 10%. So 442,000 of it is available above that 9% threshold.
442,000 would still put us within our financial guidance.
Yep, so if the vote to town meeting was 442,000, you would still be at the low end of your recommended.
Okay.
And can you say the same thing for free cash?
Yep.
Free cash is about 200,000.
And what's the guidance?
3 to 5%.
3 to 5%. One there, not a combination of both. It is not. Yes, just
So part of what we get the feel of the board of kind of which scenario you feel most comfortable with, and then if it's scenarios 3, 4, or 5, what the feel of the board is with regard to which bucket, and that can still evolve throughout the process before town meeting.
Did you mention what the assumption is for the school budget in each of these scenarios?
So it's varying in each scenario. Basically, as the revenue increased, the school budget increased as well.
As the revenue increases, but the revenue I thought you have is holding the same in each scenario of.
Stabilization and excess levy are also considered revenue sources. So basically, as you go through scenarios,
it's the
like-
same in every scenario except 5.
it should not be.
So you're saying that the percentage that you're allocating in the school budget varies
Yes,
over each scenario?
yes.
Oh, not the dollar amount, but the percentage of the budget, you're saying? Because if
We adjusted the amount so that it stays approximately 44% of the overall general fund budget.
Okay, because if you, oh, I'm sorry. At least 3 and 4, it stays the same.
Okay.
Yeah,
That may have
but
been an
5 it
error
goes
on my
up.
part.
5, it goes up, and it goes up a
Little
little
bit,
bit from
yeah.
2 to 3, but between 3 and 4, it stays the same, so
Okay.
just to,
So I want to be super transparent. So,
Yes.
we've had individual meetings with the interim town. None of these scenarios assume that level of increase. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. Just want to be super clear about that.
Percentage
Increase.
normally is, yep.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm saying what the assumption is here is about 3.25%, even though their request is 4.79.
And historically, what has been their increase?
I would have to double check. It is
All right.
3 something.
Okay.
So obviously, with regard to these increases, I figured the next question would be, what does this do to the taxes?
Can I, before you go there,
Yes.
I'm a little bit, based on our earlier conversations, it seems like things even got worse in the last couple days, or I misunderstood something earlier. Because I thought once we got to scenario 5, that there would be no reductions in FTEs.
So we were not able to do it with no reductions. And I don't want to say that they are not painful reductions. Obviously not as impactful as the first 2 scenarios.
Sure. And this kind of language, reduction of non-mandatory expenses,
Yes,
that's beyond the FTE reductions.
correct.
So maybe we're more thrifty with legal fees or something.
One would hope. I did not reduce the legal fees in any of these scenarios.
What's the magnitude of that, generally speaking,
Our-
that type of reduction? Talking about $100,000? Are we talking about you're finding 500,000 or more in non-mandatory expense reduction?
It is over $500,000 of non-mandatory expense reductions.
Which are going to be real. I mean, I have to assume.
Yes,
It's not,
Get to $500,000.
people are going to feel it somewhere.
yes.
Yeah.
Amy, can you tell me the last time we've had a budget where we've had to reduce FTEs? When was the last time we had
That was,
I'm going to say 2.
budget FTEs?
I'm not sure if you mentioned, I might have missed it in the beginning, the two big factors that are particularly driving. Did you mention that? Did I miss?
I didn't. So I've talked to you all so much this week. The two biggest drivers is really the reduction in local receipts through the investment income, because we spent the bond proceeds from the new school. We were fortunate that that gave us about $2 million of additional local receipts in the last 2 years. And we now have a beautiful new elementary school. We just don't have the money sitting in the bank. And then the other is the building permits, anticipated to be happening in FY26 or FY27 for the
How about
forecast.
health insurance?
The other one is the health insurance. So our health insurance is, right now we're through the GIC. At this stage, they're still recommending that we budget for a 10.5% rate increase, which is about $1.02 million increase for what we have right now for enrollees, bringing our health insurance budget to just under 7.99 million right now in the projected FY26 budget. We will have the actual rates by the end of March, which will be during the Finance Committee's review and process of the budget, and we will make the reduction that is hopefully coming when we get the actual rates. And we will be not reallocating that within the general fund. We will just be reducing the general fund by any savings in that. Want to talk taxes?
Not really.
Okay.
So this is just a brief overview of the property tax residential rate history. This is the per thousand rate, in case you were wondering why your individual tax bill is not $12. That's per thousand. This is just been in. And then I want to thank Patrick Galletti for working with me and double checking my model on this. So we used the FY25 residential values and applied that information to the projected FY26. This does not assume any additional stabilization or free cash that would potentially be used in the fall before tax rate setting time. And this is right now modeled at just 2.5% tax levy, 425 new growth, no use of stabilization or excess, would have the projected increase to the median single-family tax bill of $416.74. And then I have a separate sheet if you want to walk through additional models of excess, where it wasn't a static thing. I didn't want to just put it on the slide.
I'm sorry, did you say which scenario this is?
This would be scenario 2.
2.
So this is without any use of excess.
Scenario 2, one that eliminates an entire department, correct?
Yes. And then I will say that at FY25 tax rate setting time, prior to the use of free cash, our median increase was going to be about $383. So this is not far off from where we were in FY25.
So in FY25, we were at what number?
It would have been $383
Had we not used?
had we not used any free cash. You want to say anything?
That makes much more sense. Thank you for clarifying that.
I had the same panic.
It's like, what happened to 151?
Yeah, that's the differential.
Yes, that's right.
So, and now we're looking at the average 16, and that's before we even look to stabilize this budget with additional funds.
Can we look at,
Let's see what those numbers are.
can we look at those scenarios, please?
We can. So this is I'm just gonna drop that down real quick. So this is, there we go. This is slightly more than the spreadsheet I know I at least showed a couple of you in the meetings. So the top half is what you have on that slide, so the 416.
Could you make that any larger, Amy?
Yeah.
Would you mind?
Sorry, I have it on a tiny screen, you guys have it a big one.
She's trying not to scare us with large numbers.
Okay. So, apparently I'm still logged on it on my computer at my desk. So, if you want to, any number you want to see.
So right now, you're modeling an increase to
$500,000.
the levy of $500,000, which, if we're talking about scenario 2, would presuppose a $500,000 of stabilization, in theory, right? Because you want it, we're getting to
Scenario
$1 million.
3.
I'm sorry, 3.
Yeah.
Because we're getting to $1 million of offset.
Yeah, if you do half-half.
Yep.
So that would be an additional $75.60 on the tax bill.
And this is the median or
This is the
average?
median.
This is the median.
Yeah, I wanted to keep it apples to apples with our normal tax rate models.
And what is their median? What is that, 799?
769, 700. It should be on your slide model too.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is.
Oh, there it is.
So that 75, 60 on top of this 416.74 would bring it to the 492 cents. That's the per thousand
Right.
increase. So right now, our per thousand
It's 11 something.
is 1147. It would be 1201 with just a 2.5, 425. This additional $500,000 would bring it to 1211, increasing it by an additional 64 cents per thousand. I wanted to have it modeled both ways, depending on how you wanted to look at it.
So $1 million would just double it. That gets the 150, 120, I think is what.
Oh, the 1 million is too. How about if you start with the 750?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just want to emphasize something you said earlier, which is the 3 sort of ways we got here, or the ways that you've highlighted have been most predominantly the way we got here.
Yes.
And we expect that we will be here again next year.
We do. So we are finalizing updating the forecast model so that when we come back for the March 5th presentation, we can also show, a lot of the new revenue that we're anticipating in town isn't going to reflect in our receipts until FY28.
So you need to show multiple years because
Yeah.
this is very, very serious on how we're going to be dipping into the unused levy, how we're going to be dipping into stabilization, and then how we are going to rebuild our stabilization.
People are going to have to pay more.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And not just this year, but next year too. I think it's the acknowledgement has to be that we use them all this year,
Right.
just to delay the problem next year. The impact then next year will be greater, right? Because you won't have as much funds to use. So does it make more sense to use half of stabilization, like use half the stabilization funds we have available, hoping maybe some more falls from free cash, maybe puts them in a position next year to use a little bit more than half of those? But
Yeah, we've also had the idea floated of maybe using full excess levy, and that way you still have the full amount of your stabilization there in the fall when you actually see how the tax rate's looking modeled out with the actual current year information. So there are different ways to bite at this, which is why we're here to try to have that conversation as best we can.
So Ms. Sarro, so, I mean, this is certainly a gloomy, gray scenario, but I don't think all is lost. I think we do have growth projects
Yes.
in the pipeline. Can you speak to when we will see those projects come to fruition, hit the tax rolls, and
Yeah,
maybe
so-
help us grow out of this situation?
I would say our biggest ones are going to be obviously the Hadley Hotel, which right now we're anticipating those receipts to start hitting in fall of '27, which is the beginning part of FY '28, as well as the building permits for the new Vinnon Square development. We'll start having those come in, and then we'll start receiving the property taxes and any revenues from the new commercial buildings that will be there. And I've been in lots of talks with our community development director, Marcy Glasgow, to really try to nail down the timelines of these and realistic projections for them.
Keyword realistic.
But
Thank you, Marcy, because I know you're watching.
in your opinion, are we going to be able to grow ourselves out of this problem?
Yes.
We are.
Yes, this is not unforeseen. This is in the forecast to align, and we wouldn't have this gap. And obviously, that is not the reality that we're in right now. But we always knew that, this was going to come. We all know Sean always had a big push for, we don't need to cut more expenses. We need to grow our revenue. And this is exactly that.
I think using the interest income in the budget,
We also have the
we should have,
Hawthorne property, if that could.
that's behind us now, but that's where we're at. I think, the one place where we have a possibility of savings would possibly be in, getting a better deal on the employee health insurance, that we started looking at.
Maybe we can pool with Lynn, get a better pool.
Yeah, let's see what their deals are.
Maybe we can make a deal about the UV pilot and,
Do that tonight.
We'll barter some UV pilot for some health insurance.
So what are our next steps now?
Yep, so let me switch back to.
Before we go there, Marilyn, I just want to really hammer home just how, I think it's probably abundantly clear how severe this is, but, we're here, the school committee's not. But, this is, I think, a couple, if not several, or many of us wanted to really answer the call for the schools this year. And, this puts this all in a vice. Or certainly, I feel that way. And, it's not that the increase that's embedded in here is bad, but compared to what the schools felt they adamantly need, this clearly is not assumed. And we're already talking about a significant increase in people's taxes, right?
Yep.
So, we've got these things happening on the town side about the interest, the health insurance, and building permits being down. That affects everybody collectively. And, we're talking about scenarios here where we're actually reducing size. So we, as you all have, we know that you mill in the schools with this type of approach. So this is,
Yeah, I will say, this was not an easy task. One, creating 5 budgets isn't easy anyway, but even just balancing it, the conversations that Gino and I have had to have were incredibly difficult. We wanted so much to be able to give all of our departments what they asked for, more of what they asked for, and trying to balance that with the fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers, with trying to keep with, previous promises we've made to the town, and also trying to honor, trying to give as much as we can to the school. We just couldn't we couldn't give the school the full amount that they asked for while looking at the prospect of closing a town department.
I think what's really important is we need to see multiple years in front of us. One of the mistakes that we've made is not seeing multiple years in front of us and just taking the information for what it was. And this is a serious problem that we have. So, I mean, do people want to give their opinions on what scenarios they like, or do you want to wait until the next meeting?
Well, so the next meeting is the town administrator's recommended.
Okay.
So we do need.
We need our input.
We do need the guidance tonight.
I think the entire greatly can't even consider it. I don't even put it on. I don't think we should be. Right, the first two scenarios. Speak to that. I ever be. Has the been given
with the earlier today or to the one-on-one meeting board members?
Okay.
But
I don't know on which. So I know the situation. I just wanted to know if she had anything different in her conversations with them.
I have a question.
Eric.
Were you still going, Danielle?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Between scenarios 3, 4, and 5, you're just going down, one position, and yet it's costing 500 or going up one, whatever,
it's
$500,000
adjustments in the
a position.
expenses as well, yeah.
What's that?
It's adjustments in the expenses as well.
So the amount of the non-mandatory expenses varies greatly in those scenarios. So in scenario 3, can you give us a range? Is it like scenario 3, it's really more like $1 million cut in mandatory, and scenario 5, it's more like not much at all, would seem to be?
Did you say in 5 was $500,000?
Mm-hmm.
Did you say 5 was $500,000 in reduction in mandatory expenses?
Yes.
So 5 was $500,000. So what?
So the others have to be high.
Redo.
I mean, we're talking $5 million non-mandatory. I mean, I'm just conceptually.
Right? Like, where is this coming from? How are we getting to that?
It's, it's cutting into all the nice to have. So it's cutting into community programs. It's cutting into staff education. It's cutting into, even office supplies. There's already a pen in town hall. You don't need another pen. Like, it's just going through that, bringing them down,
The difficulty with us having to weigh in on this at such a high level, I mean, it makes it difficult when we don't know. I mean, we do because we've had individual conversations, but in this scenario here, like, I'm looking at, scenario 3 with 6 positions. I don't know if the 6 positions are, the chief of police or, something else, right? So, things like that would matter, right? The actual level of the position, what position we're talking about, how that affects service level. So that's what, as well as the non-mandatory expenses you just spoke to. So, maybe it's employee development, it's continuing education, who knows? But to not see that stuff makes it really difficult to have an opinion.
Have to have the guidance to recommend a budget and then a budget.
It's different about, the 18,000 residents, a heads up, and, reality check, to have these conversations on a heads up, and really a real, like, to have these conversations, challenge. That
Scenarios 1 and
Absolutely.
We're gonna be on a lot better path
Absolutely.
than it was.
We could just talk a little bit philosophically about levy versus stabilization and maybe where people are sitting there, just to sort of understand. Because I'm not really certain that I understand what the best financial strategy is, because I know that this is going to be a problem. Financial strategy is because I know that this is going to be a problem next year. So I sort of am like, well, do we save in our savings stabilization account for a rainy day, or do we utilize it all, knowing we're going to have this problem next year, but we're offsetting basically a tax cycle, an annual tax bill. It will be lower for a whole year, knowing that next year it's going to be more aggressively impacting.
Yeah.
Do you have a recommendation, Amy, on how we go about this, or which scenario you would recommend, or?
I was still going off the spreadsheet where we had a 0.5 option, and I was like, wait, what? I think what the town administrator and I will do, based off of what Gino just did, I think we're going to come forward with recommendation 4, and then in the presentation, we will explain what that I think is, however, proposed, like the idea of doing 100% levy, and that way you still have all of your levers in the fall, when you actually see what that tax rate's going to look like, to be able to address it. Because I would really hate to use the stabilization now.
Take the tool off the table.
And then in the fall, not really have anything
That cushion.
to make those reductions.
And what else might we be paying for in the fall that we're not talking about right now? Anything?
No?
No?
Okay.
No,
Oh,
I'm asking. I'm not saying like, ooh, I have something.
CBA.
Just asking.
We're not paying for that.
No. No.
I am not aware of anything
Okay, great.
There is another strategy, right, which is that because this is a known dip, I mean, we can't be absolutely positive about the hotel or this or that or whatever coming in 2028, but, you know, the 9% or the 3 to 5%, those are guidelines.
Right.
I mean, you could dip below because you know that it's a short-term possibility. And so just to make sure that
Look at a long-term forecast,
Right.
how many years we have coming in and how.
Even going into town meeting night, as you'll all know from looking at the warrant, that revenue estimate is at the beginning. It's not part of the vote. Obviously, for transparency, we would want to explain to town meeting that the intention is for this money to be coming from
risk on the bond rating.
And how much that may
so-
projectedly cost us.
So with the rating call we had with S&P as well as the previous ones, they look at our reserves as a whole. They look at our financial policies, which, as I've stated, will be getting updated over the summer to make additional recommendations to maybe refine those guidelines. But inclusive of the reserves, they include the excess levy as part of our reserves because it is money that we can tap into as a town, you know, when it is needed. So
Forever problem, we don't, or maybe it's even a slight increase instead of a plateau, but we've been very prudent about about being financially wise, and so hopefully we can weather the storm, even with some cuts, but in a responsible way that utilizes the things that we've sort of stored away for this exact issue.
Yeah, I would see the scenario a little bit differently. I would say that your scenario was that you wanted to go to Disneyland, and instead of tapping into your savings account, which is the stabilization fund, you decided to tap into your friend's bank account, which is the taxpayer's pocket, in order to make that trip. Because we have the money right now in the stabilization funds that you could say that's what this is for right now, and that's already put aside. Right? But if we decide not to use that and keep the policy at a time when we are in a crunch, when else when are you going to use that? Otherwise, you know, it's nice to have it. It's generating interest, you know, it's great. But like this is the time now to say maybe that's good planning. Stabilization, we have ups, we have downs. This is one of the downs, as opposed to going over to and saying, yeah, we still have our bank account over here, but I actually want to use your money over here to pay for this short-term problem I have.
What's the dollar amount in the stabilization?
6.7 million. I think Doug makes a really good point because, as I was trying to explain to Diane today about the difference between excess and stabilization. Stabilization is already taxed money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Swampscott has already been taxed that, and we are holding it in an account by nature to stabilize in, you know.
As necessary.
Yeah. Whereas the excess is not yet taxed. It is still sitting in your pockets.
Right.
Very true. That's a good point.
Right. I refer to it.
The I will, however, say the stabilization, like free cash, is a one-time influx.
Right.
It does not do anything to help you next year.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead, it actually creates a further hole for
Bigger
you
gap.
to dig out of the next year.
That's right.
Which is why I was saying I recommend at least like a 50-50
Yeah.
split, because otherwise you're just shifting the whole burden of this to next year's residents.
A 50-50 split that does not take us below our guidelines. So that way, if we were to decide in a future year, next year, what have you, we could then determine if we need to play around with those guidelines.
Yeah.
So I certainly would support using money that has already been taxed. That would be my suggestion, and then but not below our financial guidelines for fiscal year 26. That gives us some flexibility in the future. Is just my.
Is that I don't know if that's enough money.
No. I'm just saying.
Right.
I
No, I
would,
just, 50, you said 50-50.
I would say I wouldn't go below that guideline.
I think I think David's saying use the approximate 400,000 to bring us down to the 9% of stabilization.
Yes.
And
And
then
there's 200 in free cash.
excess.
200 and
Yeah.
So that's 600. So, so whatever it is, 600. So I think.
We do have other free cash requests. If
We
we
are
go
going
back to the school with the 200,000 that they're requesting for the utility again.
Utilities.
So,
We really only have potentially then 4.
I think we need to see what it's going to look like multiple years
Yeah.
before we make a decision on.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
On which scenario we really use.
Yeah, because I just feel like it isn't prudent to spend all of the stabilization fund, even though it is already taxed, because it puts us at maybe a disadvantage potentially in the fall to be able to have that tool on the table to utilize. To reduce the tax burden.
Lowers our revenue too.
So to me, it makes sense to leave some of that there. I'm not saying all of it. I'm not saying just go straight to levy, but it makes sense to use a combination that leaves some of that on the table so that we have the potential to utilize it, rather than depleting it. Because I do feel like easing the tax burden across 2 years is better, especially given the financial climate we're in, we don't know if this financial climate will be worse next year or better. And so to put it off and make it next year's problem, we could be putting our residents in an even worse situation, because if the economy's worse and then we need to access even greater percentage of the levy, I don't know.
yeah. And as you all know, when we do the tax rate in the fall, we're already 4 or 5 months into that fiscal year. We do have a better outlook on how our local receipts are trending, and we can update those estimates at that time to potentially reduce that tax impact as well.
When does the insurance bill come in?
We met with our insurance company Tuesday, and they're anticipating to have rates to us by early April.
What's the anticipation increase in that?
12%.
That's just on our property.
Property casualty, yep. And Mega for workers' comp is requesting 7% increase from the state. We do, however, have a 0.8 rating, so we were advised that we might only see a 5% increase because we have such a low workers' comp rating.
Okay, and then health, you're saying they're telling you to look at 10.5, which isn't even the high on
Correct,
that.
it was 8.5 to 12.5 and a 10.5 aggregate, which is what we have modeled, and we'll have those rates at the end of March.
So you have that modeled, but it could go up as high as 12, what you're saying?
Could go up as high as 12.5.
Okay. And I'm sorry, you said that coming in, when is that number coming in?
End of March, so it's right before open enrollment.
Okay. All right. So it's tough to give you an idea on what we're looking at as far as a scenario without seeing longer forecasts out there.
It is at least good to know that we're not looking at scenarios 1 and 2. So
Right.
the town administrator and I will keep working at this and put together his recommended budget for in anticipation of the next meeting. You guys will.
So you'll see, we'll see.
By
the-
charter have
Okay.
the line item budget
Great.
and everything before March 1st.
Hate to say we could also eliminate scenario 5. Is anybody really in favor of number 5 with the 2 million?
I can't because I don't know really what's underneath the hood.
We don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, we
Right.
gotta see it.
All right, so we're at 345, right?
Yeah,
Please.
345 and future forecasts.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Bruno. Okay, so now we can jump to,
We move to the UV pilot now.
jump to UV pilot.
Great.
So at our last meeting, we had a number of questions that we asked for, and I think the answer to those questions came in yesterday to people. I didn't get them. My email address doesn't, They're in your packet.
Yeah.
Right, great. So, you want to start discussion on how people feel about this? How would you like to start this?
Can I start by making a suggestion?
Yeah, please.
So in the past 24 hours, we've probably gotten 10, 12 emails going back and forth about people in support, people who aren't in support, people who are responding to people who are in support and not in support. I can tell you that I myself have not had the chance to digest everything that's happened in the last 24 hours. I would like to suggest that we hold a joint meeting with the Water Sewer Advisory Commission. And we have this conversation collectively with their board in the room so we can understand, and the Kleinfelder representative and Gino and, whatever other stakeholders they want to bring to the table or we want to bring to the table. We asked a ton of questions 2 weeks ago. As Mary Ellen stated, we only got answers in the last 24 hours. And I just have not been able to review them, to be honest, between my day job and everything else. So that is my suggestion.
I mean, on one level, Katie, I appreciate that. On another level, it's very frustrating because, so we just asked all these people to sit here for 2 hours and now we're not really going to decide or have a conversation about it. And that just feels like.
I'm happy.
And your other comment was that we had to wait because of the budget, but that doesn't really feel like that's the reason that we're waited.
Well, I just made a suggestion. It doesn't mean that we're going to follow it. I mean, you all can have a conversation.
But to suggest it, I mean, it just feels like, I mean, you voted to not have the conversation earlier because you wanted to wait for the budget, but it doesn't really sound like it's the budget. So I
Well, it's
just like.
because I'm making a suggestion. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about my suggestion. I'm happy to have tried the best I can to have the conversation. Doesn't mean we can't listen. We've already had public comment on it.
So we have to make decisions that are in the best interest of Swampscott. And we have to make solid decisions based on information. So if there are select board members here, and I am one of them, who doesn't feel they have enough information, or they haven't been able to go through everything and look at different scenarios, that's the situation that we're in. So it's an honest question. It's, if people on the board want to have a bigger meeting with the water and sewer, we can have a bigger meeting with the water and sewer. If we want to just discuss it all out here, I mean, the fact that information came within 24 hours, that's a little bit of a problem. That's a serious problem, really. So, and, I think we just just go around the table and see where people stand.
I just think we've had numerous items on our agenda where we've received information that afternoon or that evening or at our meeting. I think for something that is so incredibly important, such as Kings Beach, we've talked about this for years. I sat as the chair of this board, and we talked about this each and every meeting. The town administrator gave us an update each and every meeting. We established a Water Sewer Infrastructure Advisory Committee that's been in place for a year to study this for us. They have, they certainly weren't unanimous, but they were in support of moving forward here. Our state delegation is in support of moving forward here. You know, we talked about the budget, but we also talked about we need to talk about the fact that $5 million was provided to the city of Lynn and the town of Swampscott to address this very issue. This 100-year issue of Kings Beach. And again, we continue to say we need more time, we want to have joint meetings. Like the Water Sewer Infrastructure Advisory Committee has voted. They've spoken. They've made their recommendation to us. We need to take that information and move forward. The $400,000 that it's going to cost to run this UV pilot, you know, these are funds that were provided to us by the state. These aren't. We're not taking town of Swampscott funds and putting it here. We're taking $400,000 of the two. Well, can I finish and then you can speak.
First, if you could just give me 1 second. If folks could just be quiet, that would be really helpful, appreciative of it. Oh, okay. I have to tell her what's happening. Okay.
So
I understand.
So look, I mean, we can talk about this today. We can talk about this again, but at another meeting, it's a continuation of kicking this problem down, kicking the can down the street, and we're running into these cans. Like, we have an opportunity right now to take care of our infrastructure and figure it out, and to take this next step, this incremental step. So this UV pilot is in place for our summer beach season. If it's not in place for our summer beach season, we're not going to have sufficient information to make a decision. We're gonna have partial information. We're gonna say, oh, why didn't we do this for June 1? We're gonna miss that opportunity. You know, we don't have all the information. We don't know if this is gonna work. We don't have all the answers as to where this is going to be sited. But again, we can't let perfect be the enemy of good here. Like, the time is to take action, and we have a Water Sewer Infrastructure Advisory Committee. Some of the hardest working individuals. I just want to commend the chair of that committee, Liz Smith, and your board. Thank you for all of the hard work that you've put into this. I don't think there's anybody in the town of Swampscott who's a volunteer who has any. You've probably forgotten more than a lot of us will ever know about this. So again, I don't think this is a perfect plan. I think it's a good plan. I think we're going to learn a lot, and I think we should advance this. I think I'll be supporting it, whether tonight, tomorrow, or in a few weeks. That's my position. Thank you.
I think to say that the $400,000 coming out of the earmarked funds is not taking money out of Swampscott taxpayers is sort of a misnomer, because we're using that funds for IDDE work or relining the pipes, and so we are using that as preventing us from coming to the Swampscott taxpayer and saying we need more money to line pipes. There is a repercussion against the citizens of this town if we take that money and, instead of lining our pipes, spend it towards this pilot. I'm not saying that's not maybe a good idea. I'm just saying I just don't have the information to determine that that is the best idea for those funds.
Just point of clarification, does anyone have the actual disbursement for the 2.5 and the different categories there? Way to go, Sarah. Can you, because I'm not sure that's quite true, Katie, but I don't remember for sure, because I know we had different allocations for different things in there, and part of it was for the UV, so I
So the
want to.
vote that the select board made on November 20th, 23, was the last vote on the 2.5 earmark. It was 100,000 for a peer review study of IDDE and source elimination work, which I've been told is not going to go forward.
Okay, well, that's news to me,
Who
but
told you
okay.
that?
Told you that.
Can you
Okay, then-
project this? Is there a way to see it, Amy, up on the board?
Make it a little bigger.
Larger, please.
Let's see.
So, the 100,000, 200,000 for remaining balance of Kleinfelder complementary strategy, 400,000 for phase 2 IDDE and design, and 1.8 million for phase 2A construction was the vote that was taken.
And why are we not spending the 100,000 on a peer review? Do you know?
Thought we weren't.
No, well, actually,
We haven't, but
we
Yeah.
had.
We haven't yet.
No, right.
we will be, right?
Potentially, yeah.
Well, it's our vote, it's actually our vote.
Yes,
so
it's your vote.
It's our vote, so it's, that 100 is still there.
Okay, so that withstanding, we have how much left? We have 1.9? Is this what this is telling
We
me?
have not spent 1.9 as of the end of.
But we don't, it's not 1.9, that's not allocated, Danielle. We allocated the 1.8.
Allocated the full 2.5.
Yeah.
Right.
The
So
1.9 is not spent yet.
Got it.
So if we were going to take 400,000 out of this, potentially, other than the design, IDDE design work and the Phase 2 construction, which are the biggest buckets, the only other places that we can take money out of this that are not going to end up in SRF loans or other funding that we will need to find to pay for pipes or projects is about $100,000, and that means the peer review is off the table.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Because a capital article we had last year, $3.5 million, 1.7 was going to Fisherman's and 1.8 was going to Phase 2A of Kings Beach. So we had, potentially, we were gonna use 1.8 of this and 1.7 of the other. We're gonna have $3.5 million to do that project. Bids came in pretty low. We didn't bid the full project, and that came in at 1.8, so there is money available if needed.
Okay.
Yeah,
How much money is available? Do we know?
close to 2 million.
Okay.
But obviously, that's gonna go to future work as well.
Right.
But the money is available.
So we also have, what, 187 that we spent out of the enterprise fund that was never appropriated, correct? Never appropriated, it was just spent out of the enterprise fund to do this, the Kleinfelder,
Yeah.
I do.
study.
I do want to clarify. So the 187 was appropriated because it was appropriate costs from the fuel enterprise fund. The intention of those costs was that they would come out of.
What
the
fuel
ARPA,
enterprise fund?
The sewer enterprise fund?
It was spent out of the sewer enterprise fund, which is, I'd really have to see the policies, because that was spent out of sewer enterprise, which is supposed to be used for operations, and that was not an operational, that was not operational.
You can do capital out of the enterprise funds.
Not without an appropriation. You can't spend capital money without even the capital committee approving it. That capital committee never even saw that, per our charter. I mean, that's a serious problem.
Just to kind of get us back to this conversation, that seems to me to be a little bit of a separate thing. So I just want to say that I appreciate everybody that's here. And I really think this is monumental, that for 75 or 100 years, this problem has existed. And this is probably the first time that Lynn and Swampscott have been in the same room, actually sitting down, trying to figure out how to solve it. So I'm encouraged by that. I think that's incredibly positive. To Katie's point, it has been a real bear for me to sit and listen to the chair of the Water Sewer Committee and the vice chair be at completely opposite ends of the spectrum on whether or not this thing should be supported. Okay, and I rely on people like that, because I will admittedly tell you this is not my wheelhouse, right? I'm not an engineer. This is not something that I do that I have, massive working knowledge of. I just don't. So I am relying on that committee and the members of that committee to give me their feedback and as much information as possible. Okay, with the vote that they had, and they did vote to approve it, I think it was 5-3. After I watched the 2 hours of that meeting, it was so very contentious to me and so very polarizing opposite what the members of that committee felt that it really gave me a pause. Because for me, I'm trying to evaluate all of this. I'm trying to look at, and I'm telling you, pages and pages of emails over the past 24 hours from people against, for, and you're trying to figure out who to believe. Who has the best, who makes the most sense? Everybody makes sense because we all want to fix it. That's no question, right? I mean, I ran for this seat last year and I could have told you that was one of the biggest things I was concerned with, and I still am, right? But when you hear, things that, Mr. Spritz brought up tonight, okay? With the generator and the pollution and diesel fuel, little bits like that, just snippets of things that are, from people who are fairly well versed in this stuff, there's just so much to consider, right? And I think that without giving all of that consideration, and there's a lot of it, like it would make me feel like I'm making a rash decision, and that's what I want to avoid doing, right? But I don't want to not make a decision, and I want it to be timely, because I really do feel like, to David's point, we have kicked this can way far down the road than it needs to be. We have, and we need action. And I don't disagree with that, but I just want to make sure it's the right course of action and we go about it the right way. That's just like me, my honest feeling, and that's the best that I can say, or the easiest way that I can explain it. But if it were a really easy 8-0, we're all in favor of this thing, it is absolutely perfect, let's do it, that's one thing. But that's not what we have. There are a number of questions, and I'm from a scientist who's the vice chair of this committee, right, who's bringing up things that it kind of are over my head, to be quite honest with you. They're just not things that I'm well versed in. He's making good points, but he's not the only one, right? There are a lot of people in town, Dr. Friedman, Mr. Spritz, Mr. Patzios, that made really, really compelling arguments and gave me pause. One big piece of it is, where is it going to go, right? Where is it going to go? Who is it going to affect that lives in this town? I have to think about that, right? I'm obligated. Not that I'm not obligated to think about Lynn, of course I am. Like I said, but there are just a lot of things that are making me pause. That's just my honest opinion.
So one issue that I have is, when we talk about it's taken 100 years to deal with this, this is a pilot program that potentially could get the beach open for next summer, the summer of 2025. I personally believe that on dry weather, I have no reason not to think that it's not going to work. I've always thought it's going to work. But my next question is, what's next? And for me, it's very important to see what is the plan down the road. So let's just say it does work. What's the next step? So the next step is Lynn and Swampscott going to be prepared to invest millions and millions and millions of dollars into a long-term future plan? And where would that actually go? And how are we going to subsidize it? We just sat down and talked about our financials, which are pretty tough right now. But it's having a long-term plan is my issue.
I even think even if we don't go to long-term, if we just think about the short-term, like I brought up last meeting some issues that some concerns I have about the neighbors. Mr. Spritz brought up some great points about the diesel that was going to be used. I think I heard in a Water Sewer Advisory Committee meeting that there is a potential to bring the voltage of electricity needed to run it on electric, but that the timing wasn't going to work so that it would be open for this summer. But if that mitigates the issues to the neighbors and the amount of pollution that it's going to produce to run the pilot, then it might be worth exploring how long that is going to take, how long we can do before we get there to make that pilot, to ease the pain of that pilot on that neighborhood. I don't understand, because I haven't been given the information, how, like, is it true that National Grid could bring the correct voltage to run those machines to that island that we're hoping to use? And if so, what's the projection on time? I understand the projection on time is not for summer, but are we talking 6 months? Are we talking a year? What is the projection? Then 12 to 18 months.
So clearly this is complicated. We have all, it's not like, we didn't just start our education yesterday. We've been, on this path, some of us for a year and a half, more for a few of you. We just had a conversation and made decisions about the budget that, in a similar way, we've been educated this week and prior, and then we actually got the budget today. We looked at information, and we still were able to give direction to Gino. That was on, I counted $70 or $80 million. Here we're talking about $400,000. It's not no big surprise. We've known it's $400,000 for a while. We've known a lot of these issues. We know it's going to block some people's view. We know it's probably going to be noisy and stinky. And it's not going to open the beach for the summer. Okay? Just to be clear. We don't know how many more days it's going to open it. I think we all can guess that it's going to be better with it than without it in terms of the beach. But, hopefully we don't have a very rainy summer and it's actually open a lot more than it would have been because of this. But whether it's 1 week from now or 3 weeks from now, you're still going to have people that have different opinions about this. Mm-hmm. It's not like magically the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee is going to come to a unanimous vote in 3 weeks from now. I think it's clear, many of us, maybe all of us, deeply respect Dr. Vockley and his perspective on this. Mm-hmm. I don't think that a week or two from now, he can speak for himself if he were here, he's magically going to have a turnaround about this, right? I think there's at least one member of the committee that voted no before that I understand now is switched his perspective.
I don't think so.
No, that's changed also in the past 24 hours.
Yeah, not.
I think a member of the committee was calling. Mm-hmm. I don't, if you're saying that, then I think I got a phone call from a member of that committee.
So whether it's 6-2 or 5-3,
Yeah.
whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
we have committees. They looked at all the information. They still voted to support it. We don't always have to take the recommendation of a committee, but it's trying to think whether or not I remember a situation where we actually didn't. So we don't want to undermine the committee, I'm sure. We've known it's $400,000. It's true that it will take away from the work we could have done, but if we didn't get the $2.5 million to begin with, we would have had to pay for all that ourselves. So the delegation worked to get this money. They didn't know at that point, I don't think, there was anything about UV. We still are taking a very balanced approach. We're still putting the vast majority of the money into IDDE. But this is a secondary bet. I'm one of those people that's like, I want to go whole hog about fixing the pipes. But also, it's good to have a little portfolio strategy. Make sure you kind of have a balance, just in case. And I know just fixing the pipes ain't going to get any extra days in the beach this year.
Yeah.
or next year or the following year. So I would ask, beg, beseech my colleagues to take this calculated risk. We can put stipulations. We can nuance this. For anyone who wants to penny pinch it, I might have talked about that last time. We want to say that we got to find electricity, we got to find solar, we got to find, some other way to, instead of the diesel, put that criteria on it. We got to bite the bullet that in the interest of so many people that we're this close, let's think about, is there some compensation we can have for those 3 neighbors or so that are really going to be impacted by this? Let's work the issues instead of make it an all or nothing. Let's work the issues. How can we actually kind of round the corner on this?
So that's why I was suggesting having a joint meeting with, I'm not anti-UV pilot. I'm not. I just am anti this iteration of UV pilot. I want to understand, are there pieces that we can tweak and nuance to make the neighborhood impact less, to understand the levels of success and how they relate to Swampscott versus Lynn, to tweak the pilot to make it because I think right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, again, I have not been able to digest the answers that came in, but the data that will come out of the pilot, it won't be segregated between Swampscott's data and Lynn's data. It will just be the data. But we know that the bacteria levels are not the same, right? So to me, it would maybe the, I mean, I'm not, never mind.
Chris?
Sorry, I don't get easily frustrated, but I'm feeling frustrated because I'm hearing concerns across the board. And sorry, Katie, just to pick on you, you said Swampscott versus Lynn in your last sentence, which that makes me so sad that people are, I know that's not literally what you meant.
There's a Swampscott outfall.
Yeah.
And there's a Lynn outfall. And there's data that comes from one, and there's data that comes from the other.
Right, and then maybe you didn't get to read my email from earlier this week, but Swampscott has a much higher level of contamination. So in terms of what do we owe to each other, from where I said Swampscott owes it to Lynn because we have 5 different beaches, and 50 years ago we took the state beach, and now we're polluting Lynn's only beach. So sorry, I'm getting, but in terms of, we've spent so much time over the last 8 years, that's when I started at Save the Harbor, to stop the verses. There was so much finger pointing and bring people back together, which we did. We had a steering committee, and then I've been hearing in these last few select board meetings that the information is not getting to all of you.
It's
and I
not.
don't know why. I mean,
Right.
the minutes are up on kingsbeachma.com. The updates about the stuff I've sent you in the last 48 hours has been available for 3 years. This is ongoing, outcoming. I do my best, I cover 19 miles of beaches in my job, but I moved here for this. And I think some really good points to make. I think those details need to be worked out, but it is really frustrating to hear the versus language. That there's this, we're in this together. The water doesn't care where Swampscott line stops. And
But doesn't that affect the solutions?
no, it's one
No,
big watershed.
we all have to fix our pipes, but
Right.
I guess these are complementary solutions to pipelining, right? So,
It's not pipelining.
Good.
Yeah, Swampscott has the broken pipes, Lynn has
Lynn doesn't have broken pipes?
not as much.
No, it's the illicit connections.
Okay.
So it's just a different issue. I so appreciate all the questions, and we have been working so hard for 3 years to answer everybody's questions and do it together. We sat down in the fall, Chairwoman Fletcher, and talked about how this was going to go to the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee. We got through the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee. We had a presentation a couple weeks ago. I know things are a short turnaround. You got the answers yesterday, and I wish it would have been sooner. But we are under a time crunch. If we're going to get this pilot to run this summer, we need the approval now because we need to procure the rest of the parts. And then the parts need to be installed. And if it's not up and running by June, then it's a waste of money. I totally understand the impact this is going to have on the neighbors, and I will work as best I can to make this as palatable as possible. I'll go there. I'll talk to them. I'll say, thank you for putting up with this so we can have a clean beach this summer. It's only 3.5 months. If this was a permanent infrastructure project, then I think some of these questions would be a lot more important, but they're going to be gone in September. I hear you on the money as well. I think the source of these funds is really, really relevant context. And I think that you have the capacity in the earmark to get this done. And I know folks have asked about the original Kleinfelder study from 2022. That was not my decision. It was declared to me that this was going to be done and how it was going to be paid for. But in the spirit of collaboration, to get this done, I think that the city of Lynn would be able to add to its share of the UV pilot half of the share of that original Kleinfelder study, which means that the city of Lynn would pay $500,000 for the pilot, and the town of Swampscott would pay $300,000. I know. We just saw that you have the capacity for that $300,000 and that $2.5 million earmark. I'm not an engineer either. But we hire experts. And the town of Swampscott has been working with Kleinfelder for years. It's who you have decided that you trust to make these recommendations and who your predecessors decided. And they're great. And I've been honored to work with them. They recommended this. Perfect time.
If you dance too, then maybe this.
They recommended this in 2022. And then they recommended it again in 2025. We asked them, with the support of the town, to do a study that we split with the town of Swampscott to evaluate this, and they recommended it. They wrote a memo. I know you guys all got it. Those are the experts, and we're happy to hear from everyone. And it's going to improve the final project when we hear from the experts. And the other people, that we rely on in the city are the people we hire. And I know we have the support of the acting town administrator and TPW director within whose purview this falls. I understand the questions, but I think we can get this done.
I think the question is, for me, it's not about getting this done. This is a small object here compared to the big dollars we're looking at down the road. And I think the DPW and the interim town administrator would agree with me that this is not a Kings Beach decision or a sewer and water committee issue as much as it is a finance committee, a financial issue. For me, this is about finances. So we have, what we're saying is, listen, it could cost X amount of dollars, $25 to $50 million to build this facility. We don't know where we're going to put the facility. And then let's not forget, we still have to line our pipes. And it's going to cost us money to manage this facility. So we can't pretend like this is just one summer where we have a shot at getting on the beach. This is long term. We're talking the next 20 years. How are we going to turn around and is this town willing to make a commitment to spend that large amount of money? Right now we're talking about capital improvements to get our middle school up and going. So where's the balance in there?
Yeah, I totally understand that, and that's a big sum of money. And no one that I've been working with is going to ask the town of Swampscott to pay for something that's totally not feasible. No one was expecting us to get that $5 million earmark. We were, I think, very close to getting a $20 million community change grant from the Environmental Protection Agency. We got every indication we had was that we were a very strong contender, and Washington changed, and that happens. But we need to collect the data and build the case for when the next opportunity comes around and there is some kind of capital funding available, that we'll be ready to jump on that. And that's why I think we should do the pilot.
Mary Ellen, just I totally respect that, you hate doing studies that you're not positive will be actually used. I certainly have, I think, hopefully that's a fair comment. I've learned that and I respect that. To what the mayor just said, you got to think about this as a feasibility study. It's kind of like, it's the same thing. Actually, this is a really interesting parallel. We just, in ARPA, put up $200,000 for the resiliency work, right? We have no idea how much the actual work's going to cost. But we actually had to invest the $200,000 to figure out really what the scope would be, right? So we don't have a perfect plan for that either. And yet we still kind of put down the marker to say this is a big enough problem that we need more information to find out. I would suggest this is exactly the same parallel here.
With this, we have information on this. We are very clear, we're very clear that this project is going to cost us $30, $50 million, $200,000. We are really clear. We have that information from Kleinfelder. We don't know where we're going to put it. So I'm being asked, are you willing to spend money?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that this is going to have good results. I really do believe it. Am I willing to turn around and spend that money when there's no forecast for how we're going to fund it later on? I think with knowing what we have to do capital-wise, knowing what we have to do with our middle school, knowing what our tax situation looks like,
But just remember,
that's where I'm having my issues.
totally understand. And that's a separate vote, right? But at least at that point, we'll have more information by doing this. And unless we're going to wait for the pipes to be the only thing that fixes this, there is going to be some other massive expenditure. You either pick UV, you pick an outfall, you pick something else, unless, Chris's nanobubbles come up.
Right.
Or the oysters or whatever.
You and I have had this discussion. You pick the pipes, and you put 25 million into the pipes, and
But then you're picking the beach isn't really going to be dependably open for 10 years, okay, minimum.
I don't know.
15, Gina said.
Don't you-
All right, so now, but we go back to what you're saying. Then we say, look, let's do the pipes, all right?
Yeah,
All right?
absolutely.
So
No
pipes are
doubt
gonna be
about
X.
that.
Let's do the pipes, X, and then let's do the UV, and that's Y. I mean, what are we looking at here?
Part of it is
60
an
million?
external
Hold on a
funding
minute.
source.
Hold on one second. We're looking at 60 million here? I mean,
That's a choice, though. That's a choice that we're not making that decision today. You could say we're investing $300,000 now, and if we don't do that other stuff, it's a waste to do the $300,000.
Right.
You could say that.
I'll say
I
that.
would suggest that's not the right way to look at it, because sometimes you have to make that, take
Initial
that first step.
investment.
But are we giving, sorry, were you finished?
Yeah.
Are we giving a false start if we are saying, yes, let's go forward and do this pilot, if we aren't pre-committing? Because we know that there will be
Let's hang a big fat sign on this. This is a feasibility study,
Yeah.
period. No promises, okay? There's so much
There's a
more
lot
that
of
has to be.
pressure being put
We will be
on
the
this
ones to
being more than
decide
that.
whether or not this goes forward.
I know, but
This is,
are you not just kicking the can? Because
No, I'm advancing the can instead of like not doing anything. Seriously, right? Because at least now, like in November, I'm going to have information about what actually went down that I don't have now. And if I don't do this now, then I'm going to be sitting here in November and people are going to be sitting up here talking to me and saying, what have you done? And we're saying, well, we had an option, but we decided we didn't have the perfect information. And so now we're still in the same position.
it's almost as if this is the cost of the data, right?
Exactly. It's just-
And this is very much, if I'm hearing what you're saying, Mayor, there's no guarantee that even if the data is perfect and it works, we know it's going to work, it's great, it gives us great results, it's still not a rubber stamp to say, we're going to go in with 25 million to build this permanent thing. It's just not.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I think we need the data in order to make the case for the 25 million.
Right.
to prove that it's only going to cost 25 million.
What's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
To help prove that it will only
Right,
cost
yeah,
25
to prove
million.
that it's worth it. I mean, I think it's going to work, but again, I'm not an engineer. That's why we're doing the pilot. And the feedback we've gotten from the delegation, state and federal, is that they want to see that we believe in whatever the complementary solution is, and they can help us go fight for the money. But we're saying that we want to do this pilot so that we can back up the belief in the in that alternative complementary solution. And I am also all in on fixing the pipes, and we're doing that as best we can. I have asked the regulators over and over again, is there more that we could be doing? Like, give us feedback on this program.
Right.
And they have been strongly supportive of the program that we have. We work with environmental partners, with the equivalent of Kleinfelder, and that work is ongoing. In Lynn, it's a different issue than Swampscott. And Lynn has these illicit connections
The laterals.
that were missed.
Right.
Yeah, and so we actually put $100 million in the 90s, 2000s to separate the sewer system. So we have relatively new pipes, but that's a big project, and this is a dense area, and so there were connections that were missed, or one day someone put the pipe in the wrong place, and so what our IDD program is closed circuit television of all the pipes to try to look for the illicit connections. And we do that. We're doing the entire catchment area, and then we find little issues, and we dye test it, we smoke test it, we field screen it. So we try to identify those issues. But you only find an issue if there's a flow in the moment you shine the camera on it. Right. So that means after we do all 21 areas, we do it again,
right.
and that happens forever. And then the feedback we've gotten from the regulators, including and especially the DEP, is that even once the pipes are fixed, because of the urban runoff, the topography of there being a natural brook running under an incredibly dense area of Massachusetts, that there's still going to be too much contamination for the beach to be open as much as it is. So it's not.
You still need a complementary solution.
It's not either or. It's an and.
It's an and.
And we're not going to get to the end unless we advance the proposal, and this is the way to advance the proposal.
So in what ways, if we are contemplating the proposal, taking a vote on the proposal, in what ways can we mitigate impact to the neighborhood in a significant way? Because for me, I think again, I've not reviewed this all, but from what I saw, the decibel levels of the generator are a problem. The size of the screens that are needed to reduce the decibels of the generator cause a sightline problem to those neighbors. What can we do other than run service? Can we do solar? Is there other options? Can you do a mix of options so that generator's not running 24 hours a day?
I don't think you could do a mix of options. I do think that there's things that we could do to mitigate it. So that the site design has the generator as far away as possible from houses on the kind of the middle strip there between Humphrey Street and Inland Shore Drive. The sight lines, there's nothing you can do about that. Because that the point of that, I mean, there's equipment there, and then also we want to do the mitigation of the sound and light and all that stuff. So there's going to be views blocked at that level. I have talked to Beyond Walls, who said that they would be interested in helping us out to try to make it more attractive. And
what is the light? I'm sorry, I have not.
It's UV light, so there's
No.
light. Yeah.
Okay, so
A tarp. There's a tarp
There's a
that's
tarp.
actually to
Okay.
block the
Yep.
light so
Yeah.
it doesn't shine on the
Yep.
neighbors.
So we'll mitigate the light, we'll mitigate the sound, as to whatever
That
level.
decibel, sorry, Mr. Mayor, but if I understand correctly, that 23 feet is the decibel level that's listed in the specs, but this is going to be a lot further away than 23 feet. Do I have that correct or not? I'm not trying to smoke screen anyone here.
100 feet or so, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, 100 feet.
100 feet. So, if it's at the 100 feet, does that get below, if we have a noise ordinance or
69.
it gets below that level? Is that correct or not?
The generator's inland?
But
What?
get it from those houses that are already getting few blocked because of the equipment.
So for the people in the houses closest to the generators, with the distance, what will their noise experience be? Is it within the Swampscott noise acceptable levels?
Yes.
Correct.
So I would like to make a motion for the board to approve the Water Sewer Advisory Committee's recommendation for a UV pilot program.
Surprisingly, I will second that.
Did you say surprisingly?
Yeah, I was being sarcastic.
So we have a motion on the floor. Is there any more discussion?
Do you have anything you want to say, Gina? Is there any? Sorry, I'm gonna have my back to you.
I guess I could say, we already have a partnership with Lynn, whether we like it or not. We send all our wastewater over to Lynn. So this is just a continuing of the part. Right? I actually didn't mean that to be funny, but it is a relationship. We've worked on this a long time. I really respect the fact that as an EJ community, which they are, they were going to help us with that grant, and we were going to benefit $8 million to fix our pipes. And it wasn't a pipe dream, no pun intended. We thought we had a very good chance, and I already respected that, and that's why I want to continue to work with them. And I really respect the fact that you just took $100,000 off it.
I appreciate that also.
I also really appreciate that.
This was actually just all choreographed. We're going to keep doing this until we get the price down, so.
Hi, I'm bad cop. This is good cop.
Right.
I don't know, anybody out here doesn't believe we're going to pay for a $25 million project without the help of the feds or the state.
Right.
It's inconceivable that we would be paying Lynn or Swampscott in the future without any help.
Yeah, I mean, you know, just to that point, I guess, if we know that we aren't going to be able to contemplate a project this great post this pilot without the help of this state and federal partners, and we know the current political climate we're in, right? I understand that everybody's making the point of we need the data to push it along so that when the next opportunity arises, the opportunity doesn't exist as great as it did today, as it did yesterday, but we're hopeful for tomorrow. I just want to make it very clear, even though we've said it, and I've said it, I want to say it again, that going forward with a pilot project does not mean that we fully understand, that we fully have the details, and that we fully are committing to anything, even if the results are positive. I believe the results will be positive in some capacity, whether it's just dry weather, whether it's a very small window of opportunity that we have to open the day to more days at the beach. We're not committing to the results of the pilot. It's really difficult for me to support the pilot because I think it gives a false hope that we are committing to that. So I just want to make it very clear that if I vote to support the pilot, I am not voting to support anything after the pilot yet, because I just don't have the data to back that. And I akined it.
Totally agree.
I think
None of
I
us do.
akined it
None of
last
us
time
do.
to saying like, and I know Chris used this example at the Water Sewer Advisory Committee, you wouldn't go test drive a Maserati if you could only afford a Camry. And so like, why would you get into that car and ride it around if you couldn't truly afford it? And I'm not convinced we can afford this as a permanent solution, but you're saying, how will we ever know if we don't get behind the wheel? I mean, I wasn't prepared to get behind a $400,000 wheel.
$300,000.
Now it's a $300,000 wheel. But, I mean, I just wanted to sort of say that information before we formally vote.
So I think that's a good point, and I think that, for me, it's almost like, I think it's going to work, right? I think it's going to yield positive results, but to even consider 25 million, there's not a bone in my body that thinks there's anything that is going to convince me to invest that type of money with the current financial climate of Swampscott. So with that said, what really does matter to me was when we put that little spreadsheet up there, that money, to your point, was allocated, that you received the $5 million from the delegation, the 2.5 for each side, was really for this purpose. Right? And it is really sitting there, and it is there for use, right? So I can't, as much as I have the budget weighing on me and everything else with what's happening in Swampscott, that really was the spirit of those funds. That's what I believe, right? So that kind of makes the case for me a little bit more that that we do owe it to the spirit of that to advance it. And I am of the mindset that we just cannot do nothing anymore, right? That is really a frustrating 75-year problem that at some point we have to bite the bullet. It's not palatable for any stretch, for any side, but we just can't keep going on like this. So that's my 2 cents.
Can I also say that I don't know how this fits into this conversation. If it doesn't, just stop me because I don't want to violate open meeting law. But that $100,000 has to get spent on a peer review. Because some of the questions that came up in this conversation, I think, could have been mitigated if we had a third party to understand some of this a little bit better. And I think some of the explosion of conversation around it and the back and forth maybe could have been alleviated with a Swampscott specific party advocating for things it believed in also. So I just think that we need to focus that priority also.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, I think what we have to do is we have to take a vote, and then I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to reallocate funds if the vote is in favor. So you two have made the motion and second the motion, so I'm going to go on a limb here and say you're a yes, right?
That would be correct.
Katie, do you want to?
Yes, I will vote yes to support.
Okay. Danielle?
Yes.
And I am a no, because we do not have a thorough plan on where this is going to go and how this will be funded in the future. And I think that we have a lot of information on how well it would work, but I think that spending this money for a study is just not well-spent money. So that's a 4-1 vote in favor. And the next thing we have to do now is let's take this money here, this allocation, and then how do you want to,
Can you put that?
Can you pull that back up?
how do you want to use that?
Are you pulling it out of the construction?
Yeah, well, I think they're going to vote on it now.
Yeah. So the motion would be to reallocate $300,000 from the Phase 2A construction of the 2.5 million ARPA to the UV pilot.
So moved.
Wait, hold on a minute, what is it?
Second.
Taking it from the 2A.
The Phase 2A construction,
Can you put that chart back up so we could just see the funds, Amy, if you don't mind?
So is that out of the 1.2 million?
it's out of the
1.8.
1.8. Coming up now.
I only have 1.2.
No, it's
Folks,
on this.
we already voted yes.
We did it.
So we would be reducing the 1.8 million of the Phase.
Hold on, excuse me,
Yeah.
You don't have the money till the vote's done.
Amy.
You would be reducing the 1.8 million on Phase 2A construction to 1.5 million to allocate 300,000 to the UV pilot.
And
So that leaves the peer review in place.
Leave the peer review in place, but Phase 2, IDD and design, it's already been designed. It's 2A.
Right, so
It's
we can't,
semantics, you could take the
We-
142
well, we can
there.
clean up later.
Yeah,
But it's coming from one of those two areas.
Exactly.
2 or 2A.
yep.
And leaves the peer review in place, Katie.
And can you just explain again, Gino, the bidding and how far it came under? And we think there is a cost savings here anyways.
There is.
There is.
Definitely, Les,
Okay.
yep. The engineer's estimate for Phase 2A was $2.3 million, and it came in at 1.8
So that's $500,000 right
half a
there.
million dollars.
Okay.
So it's a $500,000 that we can add into lining these pipes.
Exactly. Could, yep, definitely.
We could.
Okay,
So that's the motion, right?
that's the motion, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to our next agenda item, we have discussion, I'm going to jump up here, discussion regarding the Hawthorne Reuse Committee.
Y'all are welcome to stay.
Thanks for watching the finance presentation.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so do we have our list there? Where's this list? Here it is. All right, so it looks like, if you look at this list, we've got absolutes on, hold on a second. Let me just let these people go.
Yep.
Hi. We still have a meeting.
Thank you.
Got emptied fast.
Okay, so we have here 3 votes for John Bond. Looks like John Bond, George Briones, Joe Markarian, let's look here, James Smith, and Brian Watson. Those are the biggest vote getters, right? So far, that's 5.
Just by,
So we're looking for 8 seats here, right? So
That's right.
those are the top 5.
Was
That's
there
right.
some, how did we, I couldn't remember when I was doing this. Was it just like a desire for an engineer, an architect, and this, that, and the other thing, not a requirement?
It wasn't a requirement.
Correct.
What were the categories? Was that it?
The categories were architects, possibly landscape architect, any type of a planner, and then just general citizens.
Okay, that was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Katie, did you use all your votes?
I did not.
How many do you have left?
I have a vote left because I try to come to the table with an open mind. And to be honest, I thought we were going to have a conversation. I didn't think it would just be like, okay, add up the number of votes we had. And so I was open to be swayed or convinced that somebody else's choice is a great choice. It's how I try to approach all my votes here.
Smart.
So,
Well,
I would make the case for Tara Cassidy Driscoll, personally. That's just me.
had a vote
sorry, where
there.
is this? Oh, I have it right next to me, sorry.
If we're making cases, I don't know that we are, but we already have 5, so we can say we have 5. We have the top 5 here.
Right.
And then we've got a bunch of people with 2 votes, so maybe we talk about the people with 2 votes? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that would make sense.
We have a lot of
And if we're-
gentlemen on here, too.
Yeah, and if we're making cases, I would certainly make a case for Tom Bellhumor. Mr.
Bellhumor, I thought he had more than that.
No, R. Thomas Bellhumor.
He has 2.
He has 2. He is a real estate developer. He does own a number of properties in Swampscott as well as around the North Shore. He is somebody who can focus on revenue generation,
Right.
which I know is important to some of the members of the board. He's I believe he was the president of the Swampscott Rotary, and I think he's somebody who has.
David, I can stop you right there, because I'll move my vote for Andrea Moore to him, and then I'll give him 3.
Excellent. Okay.
So, don't mean to interrupt you, but just
No, all good. Thank
Right,
you.
so we,
because I think I meant to vote for him. I'm not quite sure how I didn't, so, because I remember that name, but
Well, if we're going to try to convince people to move some votes,
I'm not, I'm just,
I would
I'm just
love
offering
to.
that. I'm
I would
not-
love to try to convince somebody to move a vote to Leah, who is a younger volunteer.
he is a Swampscott High School graduate of 2021.
Right, and is looking to get involved. I just think having a young perspective is amazing. To have somebody invested this early on in a process like this is important. And when I see things like that, I want to help nurture those feelings, because someday they could be sitting in these seats. So I really, when I saw her commitment to what she has done so far, and what she hopes to do for this town, I really felt like it's important to give her a chance.
I agree, and I'm happy to give. I'm
So-
happy to strike my vote for Barden and move it to Leah.
Okay. Is that all you need? You don't need another one, right? Is that 3?
No, that's
enough?
3, so that's good.
Okay, so
1,
that brings
2,
us to
3,
7.
4, 5, 6,
So we
7.
need
So we
one
just need
more.
one more.
One more.
I'd like to, especially with the apparent disparity in gender balance that we right now have.
Doug, thank you.
I'd like to make an extremely strong case for Gail Rosenberg. I don't even know who she is, but I don't know if you remember her resume, or I'd ask you to take a look at it. She has a lot of experience with kind of large projects. I think she works for the state, so has governmental experience in making large projects happen. I have no idea. Be actually dreaming that she might even be able to have some connections and thinking about how projects might be funded. But that would be my suggestion.
Not to compete with you, Doug, but I would have the same recommendation for Tara Driscoll. So I don't know if, from a gender perspective, that would be my choice. I'm happy to move my vote from Brian Watson. No offense, Brian Watson. You already have 4, so you're in a good spot. To Tara Driscoll, if that would help her get 3, that would be my intent.
But you already voted for Tara Driscoll.
Oh, then I can't. So.
Are we doubling up? Are we?
And I would strongly advocate for someone else that could. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll move my vote from Wendy to Tara, and that will bring her to 3.
All right, so does that give us 8?
Or use my last vote to vote for Tara. I don't even have to move a vote.
There you go.
I
Does
don't
that
have
bring
to
us
move
to
any-
8?
That brings us to 8.
That brings us to 8.
I do want to so we have 8, but I do want to point out, I did speak to a gentleman who has just moved here recently. He owns property over on Blaney Street. His name was John Pell, and he has a very strong background in communications. And, I'm going to ask Diane to send people letters, everybody, to ask them if they would participate and join these committee, just participate in the room, at least be there to get off. But I did take a chance. I did speak to almost every person on this list. Some people returned the calls, some people didn't. There's only 1 or 2 I didn't call because I know them personally. I've served on committees with them, so I knew their strengths. But they were all really great people, and the only people, I pretty much had almost everybody on my list, unless they said they were just strictly for one thing or strictly for another. I always kept it open for balance, so. I think this is a good makeup, and we'll have Marzi get in touch with everybody and start setting up a good committee.
Diane, do you have the list of 8?
Do we? So we have to make we have to make a motion.
So I'll
right?
make a motion to approve.
So let's go for the names. We have
R. Thomas
Belhumer.
Belhumer. Belhumeur.
I'm sure that's
John Bond. George Briones
Junior.
Jr. Tara Cassidy Driscoll. Joe Markarian. Leah Pashkova, Pashkova. James Smith. And Brian Watson. To approve them for the Hawthorne Reuse Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Do we have to give them term?
What?
We have to give them terms.
No,
No. Okay.
it's a task force.
Oh, great. Why don't we call it that?
All right, so now we have, what else is left?
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
And I understand if we don't want to go on with this right now, but if we don't do it now, we should have it on our next agenda. We need to, or maybe we need to be refreshed, or I need to be refreshed on, did we frame up their task sufficiently? I know we discussed that.
We definitely have to.
Because
I don't think
we
we
did have
have.
this debate about timing. I remember we had that debate with Mr. Watson, actually, about the amount of time and stuff like
What
that.
they're
So,
charged with and what their, goal is. Yeah, absolutely.
all right, so
Timeline.
maybe Diane can circulate
Marzi,
or whatever.
Marzi outline and.
What we
get
voted on
something
before,
based on
so-
what we talked about. Get really clear, send it out to us in our next meeting, we
Yeah,
can.
okay.
So if Marzi sends this out, if people could just give her back some input on what it should be. Okay. Now, let's go to open and close of the warrant for special town meeting. the dates that the school said that they would have dates on the 18th and 19th. We need to get this done before the 20th. The 20th is our last day. So the question is, what, 18th or 19th? Does that matter to anybody here?
Yes. Wasn't there a 10th option too?
I never floated a 10th option. I'm not going to be around on the 10th.
Yes.
We don't have,
I have a conflict on the 10th, the evening of the 10th.
right.
I will be out of town on the 18th.
So you'd be here on the 19th?
The 19th, I could be here.
Okay, so it looks like the 19th will be it, and that's actually a regular scheduled meeting for us.
Well, this will be a short discussion, I bet, for the special town meeting, so we could probably have our meeting right after.
Okay, we could do that. But the other question is, so we have the article from the petition that'll be in there, but I also want to discuss where we're at with the CPA.
Yep. I have, there's been a little discussion amongst some of the people that kind of helped pull that together, just to get a little bit of feedback from them. I think, I don't have a full complement of thoughts from the people on that yet. Which doesn't necessarily mean we can't discuss it now or next time or whatever it is.
Right.
What I shared with Diane is I didn't feel like this was like a super urgent thing. We don't even have the full text from KP Law. We need to seat this, just as a refresher, seat this committee, and then, they would have to start doing their study, and then we have to change the tax rate, and then the funds don't kind of show up until over a year from now. So it's not like today or special town meeting or May town meeting makes any difference in terms of anything for a long time.
My concern is we're kicking this can down the road, right? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because if we're able to use this meeting, if we're able to get the bylaw in, then that means at the annual town meeting, we're able to do the next step. That's what Marzi has explained to me.
The next step is changing the tax rate, so that doesn't happen until December.
Don't we have to do a bylaw, and then after the bylaw, we have to name the committee?
Well, we do the bylaw, and yes, then each one of the committees that is represented there, open space,
Right.
Concom, et cetera,
Right.
they would have to nominate their designee. But
But then there are other,
that doesn't have any impact on when the finance change, when the tax rate change happens.
no, but as far as setting up the committee, as far as, don't we have to escalate it now, or it just drags it out even longer? Am I just getting I'm getting different information.
Is Marzi here? Is she online? Is that her?
Yep.
Can she answer?
MG, is that you, Marzi?
Marzi, are you online?
She already has access to unmute herself.
There she is.
We just have to
Take her off mute.
Next meeting if I'm trying to find that communication right now if I can.
That's what I said.
town
Right.
meeting.
There's only one time you go to town meeting.
Right.
The bylaw.
We just
That's
need
it.
to have it before.
The CPC does go before town meeting when they recommend their.
They recommend, but that's not,
When they recommend the,
That's a year from now.
That's
down the road.
well after they're formed.
all right, just can you just make sure tomorrow that you and Marzi are in line with that?
So to be clear, there is no detriment if this is on March special town meeting or May town meeting. There's no detriment to us.
That's what I just wanted,
Yes,
I want to
that's-
make sure
that's
we're
all.
clear on that. All right,
Next.
So do we have to open and close the warrant?
Yes.
so can we have a motion to open the
Motion.
warrant?
Motion to open the warrant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to close the warrant?
Motion to close the warrant.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Oh, has somebody checked with the moderator? They're available? He's
We
available?
can email him.
19th?
If we can, I will email him tonight, and if he's not available, there are laws set up that he can appoint somebody, or the town, actually, I think town meeting would appoint somebody.
Well, let's just be communicative.
Let's just confirm with
Diane
them.
just emailed him, so.
Thanks, Diane.
Okay.
All right, so, no, wow, now to the,
Consent agenda? Oh, no, TA report.
What do you think?
how about if we, can you email that TA report?
Be
We
more
have-
than happy to.
All right,
Yeah.
now,
We know where to find you.
can we have a
Gina.
motion for the consent agenda?
Motion.
Oh, wait. Take out, on the consent agenda, just remove item number 1. Item number 1, because we need to get the names and we need to fill that vacancy.
Okay.
Okay. We're gonna move this for 2 weeks.
Okay, Diane. These minutes still have the vote being 3-0.
Oh, that's my bad. I did change it. So I'm sorry.
You want to,
We just table the.
we're gonna let's table the minutes until the next meeting. All right, select board time. Doug,
I'm all set, thanks.
David,
I'm all set.
Katie?
I would like to acknowledge and commend the board for this evening, coming with a difference of opinion, remaining respectful, responsive, open-minded, listening, and coming to understanding. It's not something we see all the time in outside life. Even has been getting increasingly difficult. So I just want to acknowledge that and sort of iterate that we all can be rational players. And I respect that we all are rational players and can continue to move in that sphere.
Danielle?
I just want to offer my condolences to the Giron family and Casey Giron Rogers in the passing of Swampscott legend Dick Giron. He's a son of Swampscott. He was a Swampscott athlete, professional football player and coach, and a big part of the fabric of the athletic arm of this community. And it was a very significant, unexpected loss. So my condolences to the Giron family. That's all I have.
And I,
Before you adjourn, can I have a motion to affix your electronic signatures to the warrant?
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
And I'm good. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
All right.